Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Commerce Next co-founder Veronica Sansev. Thank you so much for joining us today. For any new participants, Commerce Next is a community event series and conference for marketing and e-commerce leaders at retail and direct-to-consumer brands. And on behalf of my fellow co-founders, Scott Silverman and Alan Dick, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Our topic for today is how personalized content helps create exceptional commerce experiences at scale. Personalization is obviously a hot topic these days. According to a recent McKinsey study, 71% of consumers anticipate personalized interactions from brands, and 76% express frustration when these expectations were unmet. So today we're going to take a look at how personalization can help create exceptional brand experiences and drive growth this holiday season. We're also going to talk about how new technologies like generative AI can be used to scale personalized content. But before we dig in, I want to walk through a few quick thank yous and announcements. So first, I want to thank Content Stack and Kin + Carta for partnering with us on this webinar. It has been a pleasure to work with them. I also want to thank our amazing speakers, Sabrina Cherubini, she's the SVP of Brand and Digital Marketing at Hanky Panky. Sunil Kaki, he's the former Chief Marketing Officer at Figs. Teresa Cowing, VP of E-commerce at Tarte. Kerrigan Barron, Senior Technical Director, Mock and Composable Technologies at Kin + Carta. And Christine Masters, Senior Product Manager, Emerging Products at Content Stack. I also want to thank the amazing Commerce Next team for their support in producing this webinar. And finally, I want to thank you, our audience, for tuning in live and joining us today. In case you missed it, registration is now open for the Commerce Next e-commerce growth show, and we want all of you to be there. The conference will take place on June 11th and 13th in 2024 at the New York Hilton Midtown. It is going to be our biggest and best show yet. I know we say that every year, but we're a fast-growing event. And there's definitely some early registration benefits that you don't want to miss. So please make sure to register early. We'll make sure to post the link for registration in the chat. Now, our next webinar is in 2 weeks. It's on Wednesday, November 8th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific. The topic is revolutionizing retail, generative AI's role in improving the customer experience. And it features full beauty brands, Cerebus Capital, Adorama, and Commerce Tools. To register, we've added the link in the chat, but you can also go to commercenext.com and learn more. In our events page, you'll see all of our upcoming events that we're hosting through the end of the year. Now, if you missed any of our past webinars, want to replay anything, look at some of the content from the summit, we have a pretty amazing YouTube channel. It's at youtube.com/Commerce Next. You want to like and follow that channel. That way you get updates every time we release a new video. It has a wealth of information. A lot of it is evergreen. We hope you spend some time enjoying that content. So, a couple housekeeping items. Don't worry if you miss anything. We do record the webinar. It'll be available tomorrow. So you'll be able to kind of replay anything that you missed. But I'm going to quickly, for anyone who's new, I'm going to quickly walk you through how Big Marker works and where things are on the screen so everyone's familiar with it. So first of all, you'll see on the screen a panel on the right. This is the main panel where all the interactivity happens. And we really encourage you to interact with the other audience members. The chat is where you can tell us where you're calling from. I know we've already asked that question. You can give our speakers high fives. You can chat with other audience members. We like people to engage. That's why we do these things live. But if you have a question, we really want you to use the QA tab. That's the second link. And that's because there's some additional features there. You can upvote questions, which help us prioritize which audience questions we should ask our speakers. And we will go through that and review that with our speakers during the webinar, the panel discussion of the webinar. And then finally, the link on the very right is the handouts link. And there you can download the slides from today, as well as a few handouts from Content Stack and Kin + Carta. And then for those who are watching on replay, that link is at the bottom of the player. So today's agenda, we have a presentation by Content Stack and Kin & Carta on creating on-brand personalized experiences with AI. It's really exciting. Then we have some audience polls where we get to ask you some questions. And then we move to our panel discussion with Hanky Panky Tart Figs, Content Stack, and Kin & Carta. So now, without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Kerrigan and Christine to talk about creating on-brand personalization experiences with AI. Welcome.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Veronica. We definitely are excited to be here. And before we get into the good stuff, let's talk a little bit about ourselves as well. Let you know a little bit about us.
Which is good stuff.
My name is Kerrigan Barron. I use they, them pronouns. I am a senior technical director at Kin & Carta for mock and composable technologies. And with me, I have the wonderful Christine.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Christine Masters. I am a product manager at Content Stack, and I work primarily with automation and AI.
Absolutely. Well, Christine, can you tell us a little bit more about Content Stack?
I would love to. Yeah, Content Stack is the leading composable digital experience platform, which is essentially, especially when we're talking about composable commerce, it's the kind of the backbone of your composable commerce system. Just speaking to our composable roots, from the beginning, we have been a pioneer in composable technology, and we were actually one of the founders of the Mock Alliance, which is kind of an advocacy group for composable. And I'm very happy to note that this year we were named a leader in the IDC CMS landscape and also a strong performer in the Forrester Wave report. So we're definitely getting some of those awards, and we're really excited about that.
Phenomenal. I love that. And speaking for myself, I work with Kin & Carta. We are a global digital transformation consultancy. So specifically work fully across the globe. We've got 2,000 consultants, engineers, data scientists. Basically, we empower a connective world connecting technology, data, and experience for a variety of verticals and experiences. One big thing that we've actually been very proud of recently is being the first certified B Corp on the London Stock Exchange. Certified B Corp being benefit corporation, meaning we're a triple bottom line business. We focus on people, planet, and profit, which really brings a really good synergy to everybody who brings themselves to work at Kin & Carta, and allows us to do some really cool things like, personalization and composable. And talking about personalization and composable, we're here to talk to you about why it's important and why it matters specifically. As we've talked about, and as Veronica mentioned before, it is a top of mind, and customers anticipate and expect it now. It's something that is top of mind for a lot of people in the marketing and retail industries, but it's something that is also a impactful and hard to do thing. Give you an example. Working with a large industrial client, we had a process that we discovered that was their personalization process, in which they took a piece of copy and then had 7 different personas that they were trying to target across. And they would go through and rewrite the same piece of content 7 different times for those 7 different personas, and then literally copy and paste that content again and again and again and again. And it's not something that you always see. Christine, have you had any of those experiences working in personalized content?
Yeah, so one of the products that I work on at Content Stack is our automation hub. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is, it's 2023, no one should be copying and pasting anymore. I've actually said this in my career for many years, but it's still true. No one should be copying and pasting. If your organization is doing something where you're copying and pasting from a spreadsheet, then call me because we can help. But seriously, I think that obviously, as you just mentioned, the more personalization that you can get and the more targeted you can be for a specific customer, the better that customer will feel, the better your goals will convert. But like you said, it's hard to do that. So I think that's where, one of the points of this webinar is to talk about using generative AI and automation as well to help create that process that allows you to scale for personalization. The better personalization you have, the better your goals will be.
Exactly.
And I think we have, just very quickly to mention here, like I think we have some good examples of personalized content here on the side where, you know, and some of these are pretty straightforward, targeted messages, advertising, but, you know, thinking about things that might be more complex, like layouts of a page. Certain users might perform or respond better to larger images or more detailed content, or maybe some are more price aware. So having a bigger price or emphasizing the sale price or something like that might resonate more with a specific type of user. And as you're collecting that data and getting that information, then you're able to actually target those experiences more to those customers, and then you'll have better success.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned something very important there, and that's data.
Data, yes.
It's all foundationally brought on by data, right? So when we're talking about personalization, you got to know who your audience is. You got to know those different segments, but you have to also trust that your data makes sense and that you're targeting the right people. You know, Ken and Carter, we just published a leadership prioritize in tech and retail. Only 30% of leaders in that study could fully trust their company data, right? And the data that we're talking about is all of the customer interactions, the audience segments, everything that powers what you understand about that user and their intentions, right? To get to a predictive customer behavior, you have to understand what they're going to be doing next and how that user journey really runs across the entirety of it. And I think Christine targeted something here that's very important, and that's we are not doing large machine learning data models anymore. This is data that's specifically from your CDP or your analytics that's feeding into generative AI. And Christine, I think you have a really good take on where AI is compared to machine learning.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. And I think that this is something that has only really happened maybe even in the last year, you know, kind of since ChatGPT 3.5 and GPT-4, you know, those large language models are so smart now that in many, many use cases, you don't have to spend, you know, months and months training a model specific to your organization. And especially in some of these, you know, in some of these like content related use cases where you don't have to train it on your specific, you know, data from your site or your customer data or anything like this. It knows a lot of those foundational principles about user behavior and about the, you know, the way to be persuasive in the, you know, in the words and stuff that it's writing as part of that generative AI. So I would really, you know, if you're in the process of kind of training a large scale model right now, I would definitely look and see, you could even just do a test on ChatGPT. To try to rewrite something targeting a certain user using just the interface. And I think that you'll be surprised with some prompt engineering and some, you know, kind of one-shot training and some of these new prompt techniques that you're able to get really excellent results without having a huge training model. There are still some cases where, you know, very specific kind of information might need more training, but in a lot of customer cases now, maybe 80-90% of customer cases, you can get some really extremely good results just going directly to the large language models.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one piece of the puzzle to understand that, you know, where we are in AI, it makes a foundational difference in that you're going to be taking, you know, instead of rewriting by hand 7 different iterations, you can instead train it on what those segments look like, their names, their customer, the interactions, how that works, and then have it interpret it in 7 different ways through AI with one person clicking through. And I think
we actually have just to speak to that very quickly, we actually have a customer that is working on that specific thing right now. They're essentially, it's a, say, a financial services company, and they're using our automation hub to trigger every time they create new content. It triggers a process that runs through each of their audiences and asks ChatGPT to create just a slight, subtly targeted version of that content for each of their audiences. And in our first, proof of concept tests of this, it's really good. It's subtle enough that it's not like super weird and obvious. And I think it can be very effective. So we're really excited to see this use case go live. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it as soon as we can more publicly, but it's very, very promising and very exciting.
Oh, I love that. And I think one big thing that, when we're talking about scaling this is understanding that when we're saying personalized content, it's not just one item. You're not personalizing the content from one space. It's where they are in that customer journey. And Christine, I'd love you to talk through a little bit of this.
Yes. I love this slide because I think that, a lot of people, of course, especially in marketing and things like that, are very aware of the customer journey. But I think it's really important to think about that in the context of personalization. Personalization isn't just about like showing luxury brands to the higher income users or anything like that. It's specifically looking at your goals for that user at that point in time. And I think that this, kind of, journey funnel or user funnel is really important to look at. Make sure that you have this for your organization. What are the goals you have at each stage of the user funnel? So, we kind of have at the top here, the awareness. You're trying to get your brand name out there, marketing, social media. How do you convert that user to going to your site? Maybe you want them to sign up for a newsletter. Then once they sign up for a newsletter, what are your goals to convert them to the next level? And what are the specific experiences that you can target to that user that are more likely to get them to convert to that goal at that point in time? Not showing, maybe recommended content or special sale prices or whatever to everybody is not going to get them to purchase the product instantly on day one. You have to kind of lead them through that journey and think about what your goals are and how to convert them at each step of the journey, and how personalization can play a role there. So it's not just the audiences, but it's the audience at the point in time and the specific content that you have to get them to the next level.
Absolutely. And I love this visual because what it does is really breaks down the idea that it's not a silo. You don't just have one personalized journey. You have many points and touch points in the customer journey all the way through that need to be personalized in different ways. And that matters so much.
So make sure that, work with a company like Kin + Carta to really go through your user journey and figure out what are the types of things that will convert at each of these points in time.
I really appreciate that plug. Thank you for that. And I think one thing here that makes this hard is really the question of how do you do this at scale, right? And I think we've been alluding to it the whole time, and of course we've been talking about it, which is there is a big opportunity in the market right now to kind of supercharge your personalized content at scale using generative AI and AI automation tools, just like Christine was talking about, to really scale it up. So you understand that user journey, you understand why it matters. You can do a lot more of that hyper personalization around it, which is phenomenal. And you can do some really cool stuff, like augmented reality is really starting to take off, especially in the retail space. And that content at scale really matters, because coming back to that first example I talked about, right, where you're copy pasting, think about how much man hours you're spending on trying to do that personalization by hand. That really just slims down the process using generative AI techniques. And Christine, you have any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I've been very, very lucky in my kind of product position at Content Stack, working with both with Automation Hub and with our AI platform, in that I've been able to talk to, maybe more than many dozen different customers about where they're at currently in sort of their generative AI process and where they're at streamlining their workflows and things like that. And I've had so many really, really great conversations. And there are a lot of customers who are trying to figure it out and trying to figure out exactly what to do and where they can help. And I do want to point out kind of one quick thing that, with generative AI, there are a lot of enterprise ready applications that you can use today. There's kind of some fear out there about this, and there are ways that you can do this so that it works and so it's not as scary and the content is right for your organization and accurate. A lot of that has to do with just providing background information and more content as part of your prompts, and not just having a open-ended question that leads to more hallucinations. So, I mean, definitely, if you're on the edge and you're thinking about this, definitely, consider this. Feel free to reach out to either of us, and we can kind of help you on this journey. I think it's something that a lot of people are really looking at and wondering about, and I think it's going to really change things over the next years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit on something that we hear all the time, and that's, from our customers, you know, is it accurate? Is it factual? Does it make sense? Is there any sort of data issues? And one of the biggest things here is that we see that, 17% of retail businesses are prioritizing AI and machine learning. And that's a big opportunity to kind of jump ahead of this and take on some of these examples we've talked about of how to personalize and cut down that time of personalization down. One of the biggest things is, when you're talking about AI and artificial intelligence is, does it make sense for my brand? And it's back to that piece we talked about before, which is that data is so important. You have to have an important data set and a recognized data set to then be able to segment those audiences, train it, and let it go. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I kind of hinted at this before, but again, one of the main products I'm working on right now, and it's not fully been announced yet, so please don't tell anyone. But we're working on kind of this on-brand content application where we're taking, like it's a vector database of your information and appending appropriate information in front of a prompt. And that helps lead to this, more accurate, more on-brand content. And these types of things with retrieval augmentation or one-shot training, or all these different kind of new technologies and techniques with the AI platforms are really just very useful. And there's really starting to show so much promise in making this enterprise ready. A year ago, I would not be saying the same thing. It's a little bit more to just keep it to some very specific use cases. But now we just have some amazing customers who are doing, a newsletter that takes your location, like a specific user's location information, the weather from that specific location, and then puts it together with, golf tips and creates a personalized newsletter for your location, for your golf score, and for your weather for that day. Like, there's some just amazing things that you can do with this. And again, providing all of that background information helps you not have, accuracy issues and hallucination problems. It's really enterprise ready. So I definitely would advise people to look more into this and some of these amazing use cases.
Absolutely. And having seen a little bit of a sneak peek behind the curtain, I definitely am amped to see that roll out. And I think it's very timely that it's right in Content Stack's capability. So Content Stack, of course, being that composable DXP, we're talking about composable and composable commerce. What does that full stack look like? One of the biggest areas that Christine and I work within is talking about a composable ecosystem or a mock ecosystem. You'll hear that, in which it's a lot more plug and play with what you have. So content that you create in one place, either with personalization or generative AI, can be populated across the entirety of your ecosystem, be it behind the scenes in a knowledge base. The same content will then power your newsletter, your website, your email marketing campaign. You can use and reuse that same content across devices and across journeys, which really cuts down on the physical maintenance. And commerce, being a big piece up in that left corner here, is so impactful because you plug it in well with this mock ecosystem, and your commerce capabilities are at the same places your personalized content is also being and engaging in that hyper-focused customer journey profile.
Love
I
that.
think for that, Christine, any final thoughts or words on that?
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of shout out a little bit sort of to the composable idea in general. This is, I have a, 25-year history with CMS platforms in general, and have worked with, lots of different ones throughout my career. And this idea of composable is really the modern technology like microservices and APIs is really what enabled this to happen. And it is the modern way of doing digital content. And I think that's really, really important to note, is that you're by going composable, you're taking advantage of modern technology, right? You can pick and choose the pieces of this, this puzzle piece of all these different vendors. You pick and choose the ones that are appropriate to your specific use cases. And you can kind of imagine a customer that, maybe they have kind of like a different kind of product, or it's very specialized, or, augmented reality you had mentioned previously. And they want to have an e-commerce, a PIM platform that kind of specializes in augmented reality. Traditionally in the past with monolithic providers, it was very difficult to just switch out one aspect of the CMS for another. And, it's something that, could take years to actually integrate two companies to that level. And now it's plug and play. You just you connect to the APIs. We have stuff that Automation Hub is one of my products that can help with that. There's just little point and click. You piece everything together and all the APIs align, and it's a new world. It's really amazing. And, if anyone out there is kind of thinking about composable or what composable is, again, I highly recommend to look into it. It's really the way of creating and building together the composable experience that is perfect for your business. It's really amazing.
Absolutely. And, if you ever want to pick our brains, we are definitely powerhouses in this. And thank you for taking your time to listen to us today. We have a phenomenal panel to talk to.
Awesome. Kerrigan, Christine, thank you so much. That gave us a lot of exciting information and interesting ways of thinking about how to personalize at scale with AI. I'm going to quickly do some polls, and then I'll bring you guys back with the rest of the panel to dig into the discussion. So, polls. Our first question, since we're talking about personalized content, we wanted to ask, what parts of your e-commerce site do you currently personalize? And this is a, select all that apply type of question. Option A is the main page or hero image. Option B is the PDP recommendations. C, ranking of products in the category page. D, promotions and discounts. E, search and navigation. F, marketing campaigns, emails, ads, etc. Or if there's something else, you can hit other and specify that in the chat. The biggest one is the PDP recommendations, which really isn't surprising. I think we've been doing personalization in that area for probably the longest amount of time. 26% of you are doing that. The second is marketing campaigns, about 19%. Oh, so no, the second is actually the main page hero image, and then marketing campaigns. So very interesting results there. The next question is a quick yes or no question. Are you using artificial intelligence in your business to create personalized content today? Yes or no? It looks like the majority of people are not using artificial intelligence for personalization today. 22% of you are, 25% of you are now, but 75% are not. Really interesting. So there's a lot of opportunity in trying to scale what you're doing with AI. For the sake of the panel, I'm going to skip the third question because I want to make sure we get to that. I'm just going to do one more question, which is really related to our November 8th webinar on generative AI. And question 4 is, how is your organization currently using generative AI to enhance the customer experience? So this is like in many ways is a little bit of a deeper dive on the question we just had, not using it at all, exploring it, piloting generative AI, fully integrating generative AI, or a mature implementation of generative AI. Okay, this is great because now I'm looking at the answers. The majority of you are actually exploring generative AI. So while in the question before, it seemed like not a lot of people were using it, I think there's a lot of interest, and it seems like people are exploring it, about 53%. 27% are not using it at all. 13% are in pilots. 7% have full integration. No one considers themselves having a mature implementation, which makes a lot of sense, kind of given how new this is. I think it's still too early to be that far down the road. Awesome. Well, that was very interesting. So now we'll bring the panel up and we'll move into the discussion. Hello, hello.
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 Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Awesome. So we just had the opportunity to listen to some interesting use cases for AI in personalization from Kerrigan and Christine. Now I want to bring in Sabrina, Teresa, and Sunil. If you can briefly introduce yourselves and your role in your respective companies, then we'll get into the discussion. And I guess, Sunil, you're first on my screen. We'll just kind of go across the bottom. Sunil, Teresa, and then Sabrina.
Perfect. So Sunil Kaki here. Most recently, I was the CMO at Figs, and really excited to be part of this panel.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Teresa Cowing. I lead e-commerce at Tarte. We are a cosmetics brand that you can also find us in Sephora globally and Ulta.
Wonderful.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Cherubini. I'm the SVP of Brand and Digital for the premium lingerie brand Hanky Panky. Nice to see you all.
Great to see you. Thank you again for joining us. So I wanted to kick it off with a somewhat rapid fire question, but it's really more for context. So this is for Sunil, Teresa, and Sabrina. I wanted you to maybe talk about what elements of your e-commerce site you are currently personalizing, just to give the audience a little bit of context in terms of the personalization. And I guess, Sunil, what from Figs, like what was Figs personalizing as part of their experience?
Yeah, I think it's the survey results that we just sort of went through. I think it was sort of the homepage, the ads, email. Those are not one-to-one, but at an audience level, we were beginning to sort of personalize.
Yeah, perfect.
We're pretty lucky to have a strong retention rate, so the potential to drive revenue through personalization is high. We've started small with quizzes that retain results as the customer continues their shopping journey on the website, and surfacing products for easy reorder in the correct complexion shade. And the team's currently building the data foundation for the future that the group heard Kerrigan and Christine mention.
Awesome.
Yeah, and on my end, I think, I'm like Teresa, I have a very loyal customer, but 50% of the DTC business is coming from you. So it's important for us to personalize our homepage, make sure that we have personalization on our PDPs, as well as product affinity. Not all women wear the same thing. So we're really leaning, towards that. And we're ramping up on personalization on all marketing channels as well. So I share some examples later on.
Awesome. Well, I think Kerrigan and Christine kind of teed up that the key to personalization is the data that you have on your customers, since that's obviously what's going to be feeding the engine. So Neil, I would love to start with you on this question. What kind of data, tactics, strategies do you use to collect customer data?
Yeah. It's it's really into three buckets, right? So Teresa mentioned quizzes. I think explicit data from consumers that they're willing to share with you, and really being intentional about why you're asking that data, and also what benefit are you going to provide to the consumer, and communicating that explicitly, I think is really important. The second one is really observed data, which is what we all have, based on what they're buying, what they're viewing, what they're responding to, and that's really important. Sort of the behavior, the consumer behavior that you can track. And the third one is really predicted, right? Like as you have both explicit inputs and implicit inputs, like what can you predict about the user moving forward? So there's literally three buckets of consumer insights or consumer data that you can be intentional about pushing it all the way through the organization, right? And if you guys are pure marketers, then you know the benefit of it, but it might not have the same buy-in across the board. And so really being intentional about making sure you're prioritizing it on every team's roadmap, I think, is really important because, as we all sort of know, garbage in, garbage out. So we do need to have those inputs really well. So.
Yeah, and also just getting all that data in one place. That's the other
Exactly.
challenge that a lot of marketers have, making sure it all flows into a single system that can understand it across the customer base.
That's exactly right.
Anyone have any other additions to that on the data side? Any other things that to be considered?
Yeah, I think I love how Sunny brought it, with the explicit, observed and predictive. I will, add, enriched also to be able to know more about your customers. But I will use it, Sunny, if you don't mind, if I can use your approach. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And enriching is a great ad, Sabrina, too, because I do think there's a lot of third-party data sources that you can get to help kind of enhance the data that already may be collected from the customers directly or inferred from the customers directly. Now, our whole topic is about creating personalized content at scale. And I'd love to hear, Teresa, I'll start with you, if you have some examples of successful strategies that you've used at Tarte to really be able to scale personalized content. And also, how has that impacted the e-commerce experience?
So I would say we're in the beginning stages. We have not cracked the code on how to personalize content in terms of the creative piece, right? That's still something the teams are working through. But one of the key things we're focused on right now is identifying where the customer is in the journey, which Christine and Kerrigan mentioned, right? So if a customer comes to us from TikTok and they've already seen the video and they've seen the before and after, we want to get them in and out, right? We don't have any convincing to do along the way versus a customer that's coming and exploring, maybe isn't as confident in their makeup choices, doesn't know exactly what to do with a bronzer. And so that's a different site experience that we want to serve up versus someone who's essentially been sold it and that content has been engaged with via TikTok or Instagram or any of the other channels.
Awesome. And that makes a lot of sense because, we all have different customers, right? The ones who are very familiar with our product, maybe how to, wear it, style it, whatever. And then others who just are still learning and making sure we understand where they are in their journey and serve them the right content is so critical.
And hopefully one day being able to narrow down the options for the customer, right? Right now, we haven't cracked it yet, but there's a lot of options on the site and how do you surface the right ones for the right customer?
And I also just want to bring up a point, Teresa, you made earlier when you did the introduction is the other interesting thing that you do is like the fact that you keep the tones. I think that is actually something that's really interesting too, because if someone's identified the shade of foundation that they like, then, showing them anything else, it's a waste of time. So like the fact that you store that and keep that in the profile is also super helpful in creating a personalized experience.
Yeah, we see that as one of our main challenges being an e-commerce platform is customers prefer to go in store for complexion, right? I feel more confident seeing it in store. So that's another personalization strategy we have is how do we offer up more replenishment options when they know their shade already acquired via a different channel, perhaps.
Yep, absolutely. Anyone want to add to that? Any other strategies for scaling personalized content?
Just one quick note that, that was a really great example of using customer data to make the experience better for the end user. But, obviously consider doing that for automotive, for an automotive site where I enter, like I have two cars and I'm entering the information about my two cars and then things specific to those cars are surfaced higher or more, there's so many places that for a user that is so helpful as opposed to, giving the information to you for, marketing purposes. It's helpful to me as the user. And I think those are amazing opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. If the customer I think that's why the McKinsey study had the results. If the customer gives you their information, then they're expecting a personalized experience back. And if they have to search as if they're brand new every time, that can be a frustrating experience for sure. Yes. Excellent point. Now, Christine, I want to go to you for the next question. What challenges do e-commerce businesses commonly face when they're implementing personalized content at scale? And you talked about some of the innovative solutions that have been effective, but maybe talk about this a little bit more and how they've overcome those obstacles.
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about getting your data, and I think like Teresa mentioned that, and this is really important just to figure out, what your customers are doing, what information that you have about them, what are the kind of the digital changes that you have to make in your platform to record and get permission and store and accept and access that customer information. So if you're looking at a CMS or a CDP or whatever platform that you have where you're storing that information, that's definitely obviously the first place to start. And then again, looking at your goals. What are your goals to transform that customer to the next step? And just really think about it from the customer's perspective, what they need in order to take that next step. Is it pricing? Is it comparison? Is it other recommendations from users? Is it TikTok video? All of those things that you were talking about. How do you surface that content at the right time? And like I said, in my particular case, working with customers today, how you do that in a scalable way so you're not like cutting and pasting like Kerrigan's example. How you do that in a way that you're taking those information pieces and using generative content to create a description that markets specifically to them, or specific call to actions that are basically targeted to that user. Anything like that I think showing things like if I've mentioned my foundation shade, don't show things to me when you're out of my shade. Like I hate that when I go to the product page and then it's out of that one. Try to have those as lower priority. All of those things are just customer experience that you can help enhance that data and enhance that experience using AI and the data that you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's just a feature request for the Tarte website there.
I'm with you 100%. Or when they don't have your size or whatever it is, all of those things can be very frustrating if you kind of drill down into the experience and then you realize it's not there for you. Sunil, when we had the prep call, you talked a little bit about kind of balancing the personalization versus new product launches. I think that's sometimes a challenge for retailers because you want as many people to know about the product. Talk about how you've handled that at past companies.
Yeah, it's a great sort of tactical thing that you have to sort of balance, right? Every time you launch a new product, you want everybody to know about it, even if they're not relevant, they know someone that it is relevant to. So you kind of have to balance both. So we've experimented across multiple brands that I've been part of, where you sort of have your headline as the launch, and then your secondary message in an email or MMS or whatever it is as something that's a little bit more personalized. So if the headline isn't relevant to you, then you can scroll down and find what is relevant to you. So really not making it a binary decision around, I have to send only about the launch to every single person or a personalized email. You do have to send both messages in one. Just think about the hierarchy based on how much you know about the user.
It's a great piece of advice. Wonderful. We're getting some audience questions. I want to ask Sabrina a quick question, and then I'll start working those questions in. So, Sabrina, obviously demographic-based personalization is something that a lot of companies have tried to implement. How do you move beyond that to create kind of truly individualized experiences, considering, factors such as preferences, which we talked about, but also behaviors and browsing history?
I think that's a great question. I will start with what was the most successful, and then maybe something that I'm exploring right now that will be part of my roadmap in 24. The first one is really talking about what Sunil referred to is like using predictive. So at a moment where like all companies are looking at their EBITDA and being profitable, like who are your most profitable customers? What's the segment that shows, the highest predictive profit, and just make sure that you learn as much as you can about this segment and use it in your channels, in your personalization, but also in media. That is something that is working really, really hard for us. But something that I'm exploring that I started last year is really understanding, I think Christine, you said, what do they need? Most of the time as marketers, we're just like, what do we need? I need a better conversion rate. I need to hire to, increase my LTV, etc. But what do they really need? And I saw some success by really thinking about moment-based personalization. So understanding what's the life stage, what is the life moment my customers are going through. I studied at a small scale in bridal, for example. It's just how do you start targeting a customer way before they're ready to buy your product, An example would be Pinterest, where the wedding planning starts on Pinterest with some inspiration. They're not ready to buy, but they're really looking for products that can really help them plan their wedding. Then wedding time comes, and then conversion happens. So, and then the personalization aspect happens. So really thinking about the journey out of just the KPIs you see on your website, but really overall, how can you be more relevant to what they need? I think it's something that I really want to lean into.
Yeah, I love that. Sabrina, that's so great, because also I think like there's so many things we can predict about customers just by the little bit of information that we have. Like age is a very predictable thing. So if you're in beauty and you're selling skincare products, the skincare products that you need over time change with age, and you can kind of predict and start introducing some of those products, like where they are with family and children. All of those things generally are fairly predictable and can prompt potentially new opportunities to introduce products that may be more relevant for them. Forget the desire to upsell, but that may just be really relevant.
Absolutely right. And, intimates
yeah.
the same way, you have different life stages between, having a baby, being divorced, dating again. I don't know. It's just like all of these things happening in life, are very interesting to work on, because it's way more emotional than transactional at some point. I think it's the same in beauty and lingerie, maybe less at Figs, but still there's a strong emotional connection in apparel and beauty.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the audience questions is for Sunil. You mentioned the importance of multiple teams in building AI into the roadmap. So if you're the lone AI enthusiast in your organization, what have you done to get other parts of the organization to embrace generative AI?
The really cool thing is that even if you are not deep in sort of the technology, there's so many sort of end user tools, applications, just the cool factor, right? So find the right setting. It could be in an all hands, it could be in a team meeting, it could be a demo in a Slack channel. Like, just keep showing the like, you don't have to understand how it works, but with some of these tools that are very end user friendly, just start to show the use cases, right? That how it works. Then people will get curious. You're essentially planting the seeds for them to then say like, oh, how can this make my life easier, right? So one good example, our HR recruiting people team, I showed them how they could use ChatGPT to write job descriptions. Instead of like pinging every single person, the hiring manager, like write me a job description. It was like something very simple, but that sort of spurred like, oh, this is cool. And just keep doing that, right? And it is exciting, it's cool, and it's easy to show sort of technology with all the tools that are available. It's not some abstract thing that you have to know the behind the scenes necessarily. So lean on sort of modern tools. So I think that's cool.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty. And I think maybe why AI has become so buzzy these days is because ChatGPT, anyone can use it. You don't have to be a coder. You don't need to know how to write script. You can just go in and ask a question or ask it to rewrite something, and then you see the result. And same with some of the tools like Midjourney or DALL-E. Like, it's so visual and intuitive, not how it works, but the results are intuitive to the prompts that were given. Then I think people now for the first time are starting to be like, oh, I can use this. And I can see the strengths and weaknesses more clearly. And I think that has really been an interesting development. Teresa, there was also a question from Sophia about, I guess she's a Tarte user. She mentioned that it took a few trials to get the shade in combination right. And she had tried twice before finding a store associate that could help her on the third visit. And she was wondering, how you address that as part of your strategy, that aspect of like finding the right store associate or the right way to be able to match your shade.
So I lead the e-commerce side, so my answer will focus more on the e-commerce side than the store side. We offer a few ways for customers to find their shade, right? So I mentioned the quizzes. There's also virtual try-on. So if the customer wants to enable the camera, we get amazing positive feedback. We also get feedback with that virtual try-on that didn't work for me, right? We get the whole gamut. And so the way we address this is really free shipping and free returns. We want people to feel like they can take the chance and it's very little risk for them. So that's really the e-commerce strategy around that. If it's not the right shade, you can contact customer service and do a return.
Easy peasy. Because once they get into the right shade, then they can keep returning. Perfect. Awesome. Kerrigan, I have a question for you. We didn't get a chance to yet in this discussion to talk about this whole multi-channel, multi-device world. So I feel like it's important for us to be able to dig into that. How can e-commerce experiences ensure that their the personalized content for customers, it carries through across all of these different touch points?
I think that's a phenomenal question, mainly because it's so intrinsic to how we use things as humans. And I think that's the answer ultimately is, remember that there's humans on both sides of this equation, right? There's individuals going through all of these different pieces and parts of a user journey across multiple devices, different ways in which they enter the customer journey overall. They don't all start at the same place and end at the same place. But there's also humans on the other side of that having to create all of these experiences, all of the personalization, all of the targeting that we've talked about. And the biggest thing here is to remember that as much as we can make it easy for them to both produce and run with these experiences at scale, the better it is for the end customer who's having these experiences at the end. A lot of what Christine and I do and talk about is, of course, this composable landscape, mainly because we're centralizing the content and the authoring capabilities and the commerce capabilities in the back end. So you have kind of a one-stop shop place to be able to pull in all of these different pieces and parts. You're not logging into multiple systems. You're all in one spot that then controls, as a central repository of content, all of the pieces that make the commerce experience happen. Then that's the kind of win that you see when you're going a composable route, because you're not tied one-to-one with, this is the content for the app, this is the content for the marketing side, this is the email engine and only their content. It's the content that you see across the entire journey. It's consistent, it's clear, it's on brand. And that is something that's just so important to remember, is the human aspect of all this.
Yep. And Christine, when we had the prep call, you talked about there's an aspect of the devices themselves that trigger personalization, right? Because the experiences that you may expect on the go with a phone might be different.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have customers that have, a kind of almost a personalization targeted to website, to mobile apps, to kiosks. So you have things like, loyalty programs and customers that are, doing things on a kiosk and punching in their loyalty numbers and things like that. And there might be, different content or promotions that are targeted specifically to those users. And again, based on their location and their point in the kind of the e-commerce funnel again. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think that's a very important thing to look at, is where is your customer needing you, and meet them where they are in their journey, and offer them the information and the reasons to go to the next phase in their user journey.
Absolutely. We have time for one or two more questions. I feel like we would be remiss to talk about personalization without talking about privacy. So I'm going to go to Sabrina and just ask, how does privacy factor into personalization, and what have you done so far at Hanky Panky to ensure compliance?
Oh my God, that was a journey in 2023, right? And we won't stop in 24. So so just like being compliant in the US is one thing. So it's like really, it impacted us from an email perspective and loyalty perspective to make sure that we're following, all regulations. I think we're global also. So I would say the challenge was more global for us. Having activities in the EU, we learned a lot about regulations over there, and it's evolving very fast. So from, an SMS perspective, email, subscription, transactional emails versus broadcast, all of these great things that we learned. We were, lucky in some ways, because one of our key partner on email and SMS is based in Europe. So it was the opposite. It was just to make sure, like, hey, we can do a little bit more things in the US than we can do in Europe. So from full compliancy there, like, we're trying to give us some more freedom in the US. But we're really thinking, as many other brands, about, how do we make sure that we're on top of the evolution of regulations, and maybe also bringing talents in-house to help us really on that aspect. But I know that's a challenge for many people right now. I don't know how the others are doing that, but for now, I'm really thinking about 24 as, you know, something that I have to strengthen somehow internally.
Awesome. Yeah, this and definitely Europe is a different beast than the U.S. And I can see how that could be a challenge. Any other thoughts, suggestions on privacy? Okay, I'm going to switch the last question to make it a rapid fire because I feel like all of you probably have a lot of interesting data points here. We've talked a lot about tactics and how you're implementing personalized content, collecting data. Now, what are the KPIs that you use to measure success from your personalization initiatives, and what insights do you use to refine your strategy? So I'm going to go around. I'm going to start with Teresa, and then just kind of go around if everyone can share KPIs and what insights you gleaned from them.
So for personalization, we look at it more holistically. It's the traditional e-commerce KPIs around engagement and conversion, but it's also the post-purchase, looking at new customer cohorts. How often do they return? Are there some channels with new customers that are more likely to return? It's all tied together with the overall business. I wouldn't say it's specific to personalization.
Got it. Sunil?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's sort of one of many things that have to work really well. But you can find like very specific places like email engagement rate and unsubscribe rates getting better, email open rates getting better. So you can find like specific metrics, again, to make sure that everyone is coming on board, that you do have to show very specific output and KPI improvements. So you can pinpoint, kind of do tests and pinpoint. So it is, but I think it's going to be one of many things that sort of start to drive the business forward and really drive LTV and engagement, all those sort of the longer term metrics in the right direction.
Yeah, was it something we changed to Theresa's point in Kerrigan? These are human beings. So now as a senior leadership team, we not only have our KPIs, but we start talking about customer performance indicators. So we really monitor some specific objectives that we have as a team that we monitor every single week, from, exactly what you talked about, like new, existing, reactivated, churn prevention. For us, it will be, retention of new customers, LTV, all of these great things, but you cannot monitor all of them. So to us, it was more about, like, from a quarterly perspective, as the senior management team, what are the key business metrics and customer metrics we need to look at, and we do it over, and we communicate that to the whole company. So everyone is really into the customer metrics as much as they are into the business metrics. That's new, and I hope it will also change and really, really create a company that is customer obsessed and not just business obsessed.
I love that. I love that. Kerrigan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sabrina hit a big piece there. Kinney Carta as a solutions implementer, we teach a lot of our clients like how to get started on Gen AI, but one of the metrics that we focus on is time saved on humans actually implementing all of this, and how efficient it is for them to scale that personalized content quickly is one of our key metrics. And that's around content produced, times used for implementing Gen AI, either like translating content or implementing new blogs, time to publish, or just generally reduction of resources needed to do one piece of that journey, so they can focus on other things.
Love it. Good suggestion. Christine?
Yeah, just very quickly, a lot of really great responses so far, but just one kind of idea is just, make sure that you are capturing that data and those metrics as you're creating content. And, AI and generative content is a great opportunity for A/B testing. So kind of put out some different things, create, yes, you're going to create maybe 7 different versions for 7 different audiences. Maybe create 14 different versions and see if, one of the two that you target towards the luxury buyers, one of them performs better than the other, and make sure you're gathering that data and seeing what that means and then iterating from there. So it really produces a lot of opportunity for growth and for excellent data and getting some great performance.
Wonderful. I love it. A combination of just overall kind of customer and e-commerce health, as well as some A/B testing related metrics. Very good. Well, Sabrina, Teresa, Sunil, Kerrigan, and Christine, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights today. For those who are watching, we'll be back on November 8th with a webinar on generative AI. So we're going to go further, but talk about its overall impact on improving customer experience. We look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.